Well, hi everybody. This is Al Spath on Positive Poker Insiders, and today we have a special guest. We got the Queen of Diamonds herself, Nancy Todd, coming from us from Boca Raton, Florida, I believe. She has not been in Vegas for a while. She's going to tell us all about that. But Nancy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Now, I got to start right off the top because I saw it last time I saw you, and you were at the meeting, the Wednesday meeting with Alan Schoonmaker and Linda Johnson over at the Mexican restaurant. You gave me one of your business cards here, and folks, I'll hold it up for you. This is some nice looking card here. The Nancy Todd, it says Tyner on it, but she's the Queen of Diamonds, and on the back side you can see it's really a nice card. Anyhow, I like that card, and I enjoyed meeting you and the group up there. But were you just visiting Vegas at that time, or were you living there?
I was living there, was there for about a decade. In fact, my twins were born there, and signed a campaign in the Midwest and took the kids there. And then from there really had to make a decision, and that's a better school scenario for them here. I was originally in Florida. I've lived in 42 states running a 200 political campaign, so I'm pretty comfortable wherever I am. So I just made the decision for something I thought was a better scenario for my children.
So you migrated down to Boca finally, like most everybody else that wants to get out of the cold and get set. How close to a casino are you?
The Isle, well, Coconut Creek is pretty close, but they don't run the larger tournaments pretty rarely. And the Isle is only about 8 miles, and then Hard Rock's about 40 minutes. So,
do you consider yourself more of a tournament player than a cash player?
100%. I really don't enjoy cash. I think I could do it. I could grind it, but I don't enjoy it. I enjoy the strategic part of poker tournaments immensely. It reminds me of what I've spent my last 30 years doing, running a political campaign. I just don't have to go to Iowa for 4 months, so it's a lot of similarities.
Well, let's talk about the political console. I noticed that when I looked up some information. You, I don't know, where were you born? What state were you born in?
In Germany. In Germany.
You were
born in Germany and raised in Europe.
Your father was in the Air Force.
Air Force fighter pilot, yes, right. And then was stationed stateside when I was 10 years old in Louisiana and retired there. So that's where I got this accent, although my kids love it because I can go back to my native British accent quite easily. But I found this one to be a little bit more disarming. So I went to school in Louisiana and wanted to be into politics but they were all men and they were all lawyers. So I started law school at 20 and did not finish. I'm not a practicing attorney. I spent a year in law school and then started working in a political campaign, which was the goal that I had, and ended up going to Washington from there and went out on my own, and that's what I've been doing the whole time.
So you're still an LSU Tiger, though, right?
I'm still an LSU Tiger. That comes in your blood with any sort of loyalty whatsoever. I was talking to a gentleman in Mississippi the other day, and he said, "Now we got to talk because I'm an Ole Miss boy." And I said, "Oh Lord," So it's funny how those rivalries, especially in the South, will carry forward.
Well, I was in the Air Force and stationed down in Lower Alabama called Eglin Air Force Base. It was in Florida, and I used to go over to LSU all the time. And
yeah, you were destined. Yeah.
Yeah, those games. I remember those games with Alabama and with Mississippi, with the Mannings and things like that. It was just when Tennessee came down with Archie. With Peyton Manning and just oh my goodness, you couldn't hear yourself think in that stadium. The rabid fans.
Blood sport. That in politics. It was years later, Al, before I realized that everyone in Louisiana is a political consultant. So it was it is the second sport behind football. Politics definitely fits into that state.
Well, you did pretty good in politics too, because I understand in 2009 you were entered into the Hall of Fame.
Only woman, and I think still hold the record, but probably most proud of having the highest win record in the world still. My oldest asked me one day what I would do if anyone broke my record. And I said I would be the first person to congratulate them, because if they can beat my record, they've worked really hard. So far, I still hold that one, highest win record.
That's pretty cool. Just before we get into more poker and anything, can you just, I know that you did international politics for a long time, but you want to make a comment about what's going on with all these debates and, the riots and how people are falling in line to follow these choices that we have?
Well, it's crazy is what it is, and I do still do an awful lot of speaking, mostly on college campuses, Harvard, etc., about the process. And I have to tell you that if you want to change the caliber of candidates, that we as Americans have to change the process, that our process is designed to give us what we have today. And I think that our forefathers, I think there's a lot of failings in how it was set up. I don't think they destined it to be a lifetime career, to serve in the Senate and then automatically move on up. So I'm not a fan of where it all is. I still do international politics, but the most I get involved domestically is in the presidential race, but mostly to talk about it. I'd love to see us, we could go for several hours on the things that I'd like to see changed in the American political system. But when you change the system and change the money and make regional primaries instead of making Iowa and New Hampshire somehow in charge, I still don't know where that comes from. Every 4 years, these two little states, emerge, and we all have to follow them, and change the way that money is being spent in politics. When you see those things happen, I think you'll find a higher caliber of candidates, but you can't just shoot at the candidates. It's a system that's destined for them.
I know. I responded to somebody the other day. They dragged me into the conversation, and I told them, I said, this is me thinking, I wish the presidency was a 6-year term so that they could get something done and we don't have to deal with the midterm, of re-election and things like that. And I wish that the senators were capped at two terms and the House of Rep was 4 terms if they're 2-year terms. Something, because they're going to get a salary for the rest of their lives, and we need to get something out of them and everything. But I think that we get this thinking that they're bought and paid for after a while, and nothing gets done.
It's interesting you say that, because the one thing that I tell people, and I also tell them I'm going to write the book on how to change the system, but it will be after I no longer need to make money within that system. But the one thing that I think that our forefathers missed is definitely on 1 6-year term for president. You're the only other person who's ever said that, and I've long been a proponent for it, because nothing happens in the first 4 years except running for re-election, and I think that's pretty far off the mark from what our founding fathers wanted to see happen.
And I think it's the first 90 days to 120 days that the president really gets his agenda or what he can get through. He picks she picks her, hopefully maybe in the future, their priority, and they jam it through, and they usually get it done. And I think that's what Obama did too. He had to prioritize what he wanted to get in and get done. But I think after that, it's really the Congress who stalls everything. The president can't get anything done if the Congress doesn't want to do it.
No, and I find it interesting. I have 7th grade twins who are in school here in Boca, and so the teacher called me and asked me if I'd come talk to the class about this whole political process that they're studying. And I have a daughter who's thrilled and wants to be sure I mention her name, and her twin brother who says, please don't tell them that I'm your mother. The whole routine they're so funny. But one of the things that came up was on the Supreme Court nominee. And I just find it horrendous what they're doing. I mean, the Republicans are being very foolish on this question, because if they were smart, they would let Obama name a moderate. He has to name a moderate. If they stall it out and Hillary is the president, if I were her, if I were I'd just name Obama.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a foolish way that they're going around. They need to be very careful what they ask for to filibuster having a moderate come in.
No, I agree 100%. I think that they're making a big mistake, and I think as we get closer to election day, I think you're going to hear, or maybe even September, you're going to hear more and more people say, okay, now that Trump has got the nominee and Hillary's got the nominee, and we know that Trump's going to lose, let's interview that guy now and put him on there. I think they're going to come over to the other side or the dark side. And by the way, we've got Carrie from up in Las Vegas. She goes by the Dark Hammer. She said, good morning, Nancy, and all. She's one of the people that used to go over to the Wednesday meetings. I don't know if you remember Carrie. She goes by several different names, but she's got short reddish hair.
Yeah, I think she and I met playing poker, I believe.
I think so too. She wanted to make sure. She said, here, reference the politics. she's really a fan on board with that. Hey, let's talk about after we get through this politics. You authored two books. One was 52 tips on getting through life, and one was 52 tips on winning at poker. What's
Well,
the symbol?
actually that's not correct. I had a lot of traumas as a parent, and I wrote a story for the Getting Through Life book that so I was part of that. But there are two sets of playing cards that I designed. One is Nancy Todd's 52 Tips for Getting Through Life, which has a lot to do with your power of positive thinking. And then I was asked to do some tips in terms of poker, which is also a lot of the thinking positive and don't draw to inside straights and things that, as I was trying to learn it myself, I just happened to see the World Poker Tour on television a few years ago. I'd never played. I'd been in the gaming business since 1992 by legalizing casinos and couldn't tell you one single thing. I don't know how to shoot craps. I don't know anything, but I did see the World Poker Tour and I saw the strategic part of it and got involved. So just one book at this stage.
Out of all those tips, what's the one tip that comes to mind to you that is the most important? Even though there's a lot of important ones, what's the first one that comes to your mind when you think about all those tips?
They'll follow what Tiger Woods says, to focus on the next hole and not the last one. And I think that that's one of the things that helps a lot of us or hinders a lot of us, me included. Somebody makes a really stupid move and you get one outed and, it's hard not to focus on that and what you could have done differently, but focus on the next one, focus on where you are. If you still got some chips, you're still in the game and not let that bring you down. And I think that's probably had a lot to do with my success.
You sound a lot like my good friend from Florida, Donna Blevins, who was one of our first interviews here on Positive Poker Insiders. And Donna, of course, is coming out with a new book on mind shift, and it should be very interesting to hear what she says, because I think that people, like you just said, that dwell on the past, kind of live in the past, and it affects the future. And I think that that's a waste of time.
It is a waste of time, but it's what Tiger Woods. Somebody had given me his book on his tips on playing great golf, because any sort of a terrific mindset, competitive mindset sport has similarities, and that was the one that stuck with me from him, was to focus, to teach yourself to focus on the next hole or on us on the next hand versus the last. It isn't very easy to do, especially if you get upset or somebody. And women do have a different run at it at the tables than I think men do. It's an entirely different game.
Well, that's a question I was going to ask you about the women. I wrote an article called Halo of Fear several years back for a national magazine, and it talked about the first inductees into the Women's Hall of Fame, which I think was Linda Johnson and several others. To the top of my head, just can't come up with the names right now. But talk about a lady at the table, what she encounters. How is the field balanced? Is it a level playing field for a lady at a tournament table or not?
Never. It never is, and we're sort of discounted a lot. And when you've been around for a couple of years and had a little bit of notoriety and some TV time, I don't get played as anonymous or as I did originally when I first started. But it's never balanced, and we are still 2 to 3%. A gentleman asked me not long ago, do you know so-and-so? And it was a woman, and I said, yeah, all women know each other because we see each other in the bathroom. There's 10 of us, so we do know who the others are. But it is a different mindset, and I've never seen anything written specifically for women as a player, but it's a different set of challenges. It didn't take me long as a strategic person to understand that I couldn't bluff at the beginning. I can't. I have to set that image up because I'm going to get called quicker, and it's more from testosterone more than anything else. It isn't from, it's setting that whole thing up. But men hate losing to a woman. They hate losing, and especially I think an older woman. Some of these young girls, it might be a different deal, but and you can counter that with. I was asked at a radio interview not long ago, what did I attribute my success in poker to? And I said, I've never met a man who could read a woman. So I do believe that there is a counter to that, in as much as most men struggle with trying to figure women out.
Well, let me ask you this then. You talk about countering they're offensive and aggression towards a woman and everything. How does a woman use her looks for distraction, anything else that she can get to maybe get them off track of what they're doing? Do you find that a woman does this or not?
Well, I find that young women who are inexperienced may try that. I can honestly tell you that the rest of us would just like to be considered a poker player.
Sure.
And it shouldn't be about sex or anything else. It is a beef of mine that when they write about women, they write about how we look. When they write about men, they write about how they play.
Right. Yeah.
And it's correct, and it's unfair. And so then you wonder about, the stories that get made about the comments and all of that. Women are not treated very nicely at the tables. The ones that are treated with some semblance of respect are those who can play like men and who are known for having that reputation. But as a mindset, it's unfortunate to see that we've not progressed. It's back in the days when I first started doing campaigns, and we haven't come very far in the last 25 or 30 years.
Top of your head, best female player out there right now, tournament-wise?
Oh, Vanessa Selps is
Selps.
Fabulous. Selps is great. I only have one beef, and that's that when they talk about all of her great accomplishments, they talk about how well she does as a woman, and it makes my back arch. Why don't they talk about how she does as a player? Because, show me men that have come as close. I mean, she's in that top echelon, and it shouldn't be a requirement being a top female player. It should be that she's a top poker player around the world.
What is it going to take? What do you think it's going to take? Do you think it's going to take a main event win by a woman to change it?
I think that's going to have a lot to do with it, and I think the more that women get into the game, and I know some of us feel that we have a little bit to do with making women feel that they can come into the game and hold their own. I did politics for 30 years, continue to do politics. There's absolutely little at the table that's going to shock me. When I first began to play, someone asked me, a dear friend said, "Doesn't it scare you to go down there?" I said, "Look, after what I've been through in my life, you think a bunch of little old men and their chips are going to scare me?" But not everybody has that same attitude, and they're certainly not welcomed at the table. I mean, it's still very much a man's world, but I had a lot of success in another all male-dominated field, so this one hasn't been too scary.
Did you participate any with Lupe Soto in the Lips Tour? Did you go to any of the Lips Tour events?
A few in LA. Yes, I did a couple of them there, and I think a couple of them in Vegas. I know Lupe mostly from Jan and Linda.
Yeah, Jan and Linda, yeah, from the cruises and everything else. And Jan's a good friend of mine. I still give her article out to a lot of people that requested from me about figuring odds, the rule of 4 and 2 that she wrote for Card Player years ago. And Linda's been a real good ally of mine for a long, long time, and hope to have them both on the show in the near future. I'm trying my best. Vanessa Rousseau is supposed to come on next month. She's playing in a tournament today, and I just wished her luck this morning on Twitter. So I hope that she listens to this broadcast later on, and she knows that we're all pulling for you, Vanessa, out there. And I want to talk to her a little bit about Big Brother too. I really enjoyed her on Big Brother last year. I don't know if you watched that show or not, but
well, I didn't. I had people who were not in the poker world asking me questions about that whole thing, because it was just an interesting thing. So I got enough of the gist of it through their questions and queries, so because they didn't know her as a player.
Yeah, I like those shows only because I like to analyze people and see what they're thinking, and see if I can see a tell and things like that. I was watching Survivor the other night, and they had a poker player on that as well, and she got eliminated. She thought that she had them all fooled.
Who was the poker player?
I don't know her name.
I don't either.
I think it was Amy. I think her name was Amy, but I don't know her last name. I have to look it up. But she just thought that she was running a good con on him and a good bluff on him, and she just got blindsided like somebody at the table that didn't see it coming. It was awful. It was like Jennifer Tilly on that one show when she had the full house and she didn't bet. I don't know if you on the.
I saw it. My mouth popped open, and then I saw all the comments. But yes, that was a shocker. Yeah, said you were scared of quads. You know, I was like, okay.
How can you be? I think that was. I think that was her boyfriend telling her afterwards that you got to come up with some kind of excuse why you didn't bet that hand.
Yeah.
Hey, let's go back to what you just said about venues. You told me earlier before we got on air about you being around to all these different states and all these different casinos, but more, you told me about Macau and you told me the international. Tell us what you do over there when you go over and visit these casinos.
Well, I don't go visit them.
Or,
I don't, but I am brought in by governments, entities, businesses. In Mississippi, the first gaming campaign I did, it was some starving business people who had already lost the election one time, 14 months prior, and thought, well, let's hire an expert in campaigns to see if we can't pass casinos. And the funny story that has come out consistently on that one was that had just had my oldest child. I'm still breastfeeding him, just a few months old. I called everybody I knew. I said, can you come help me? And they said, Nance, listen, we love you, but you'll never legalize the casinos in the heart of the Bible Belt. So I take a baby in a crib and I nurse in the bathroom stall and legalize the casinos there. So from 92 until 2000, I did almost all the venues you see in the United States. And then from 2000, I'm brought in as the gaming expert to tell them how to do it right. What components do you need? Where should the money go? How many can you legalize in a venue, in a country, in a state? So, and China's as funny as the rest of them. They did exactly what the state of Louisiana did. In many ways, the state of Florida did. They put all of what they consider to be the problems in the southern part of it. In China, they put it in Macau and then get insanely jealous. It happened in New Jersey. Insanely jealous when all that revenue is consumed in one area, and they want to try and cut in on that. But there's no vehicle. I was hired by Republic of China to try and bring casinos in, but there's no vehicle to expand it past what was already done into Macau.
Wow. What's the nicest facility that you would been a part of looking at and advising? Is there a facility out there that has it all together? I mean, just dominates.
Well, I'm partial to Mississippi because it was the toughest campaign out of 196 that I've ever done. It was a tough campaign. It was a hard campaign. I had people praying for my infant son's life's soul because of what his mother was trying to do. It was a very difficult campaign. So I take a great sense of pride in going back and seeing what it's done and how many people have been put to work and the economy. And still 24 years later, I can go over there for any sort of business. I am working on a project on there now and have people come up and say, you changed my life. So I'm very
nice.
Prideful of that. Yes.
That's really great. I had Matt Savage on a couple weeks ago here on Positive Poker Insiders, and he was talking about how the Commerce just expanded its whole facility there and upgraded the hotel and everything else. And he was pretty jacked up about that. And I used to live in California and go down to the Commerce, and it was pretty big when I went down there. So I can imagine what it's like now.
The Bicycles just opened up a hotel, so.
Oh, that's good too, because I used to go. I used to go down there too when they had their annual big tournaments down there. TJ Cloutier, a friend of mine as well, and I haven't talked to him in years, but I told a story on here once that I got a call at 1 o'clock in the morning from TJ, and I couldn't imagine why he's calling me at 1 o'clock. He said, "Yeah, Al, are you there?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "My pool, it's broken. Can you come fix it tomorrow?" I said, "TJ, who are you calling?" He says, "This is Al, the plumber." I said, "No, this is Al Spath in Maryland. You woke me up." He said, "Oh, okay." The next day, he didn't remember anything about it. He didn't, TJ. He didn't know where he was.
I do know him. Yeah.
He's pretty funny. He's pretty funny at all. How about table image? We talk about the ladies a little bit earlier, but how about the men? When you're looking around the table, what are some of the signs you're looking for to determine or mark them as loose aggressive or as tags, whatever the name that you want to? What are you looking for from them?
Well, I do like to watch the play before I get too involved because everybody has some sense of a tell in betting patterns and their play. But these days, the easiest tell to me is how much attention they're paying to the game. it's the cell phones, and it's holding up the game, and it's the headphones, and oh, he's really all in. It's a high distraction. I mean, I personally wish they just checked all of that when we got in there, but. And I can assure you, I mean, I carry 4 cell phones. They're no busier than I am. Don't have as many mortgages or children, but for some reason, it holds things up. So if someone is much more enamored on their cell phone than they are on anything that's going on, then that's what we need to be. It's usually a pretty big tell to me that they're not as into the game as they should be. So that has something to do with it. And then, obviously paying attention to what somebody raises from with early position. At some point, they're going to have to show a hand. Somebody consistently does it. It doesn't take long to figure out they don't have a hand each time. And, those sorts of things. But mostly paying any attention to what's going on. People who look at their cards before their turn comes to them, as we all know, is a sign of somebody who's much more interested in their 2 cards than the action that goes on in front of them.
How about age? With the influx of the internet poker players and there's more young people today playing poker than ever was before. If you go back to the days when Doyle won his first bracelets and stuff, you look around the table and probably the average age was 50 or higher. Now you go to a table and you have a lot of young kids, a lot of kids that you would call rambunctious and anxious and just, they're just chomping at the bits and everything. But are you able to fit any of those newer players into a category that would be similar to in the past with somebody with a lot of patience and discipline, or do you just write that off because of their age?
No, you can tell a lot. You can, right after the UIEGA thing came and the online stuff stopped, there was a huge influx into the land-based casinos, and you could certainly tell the people who were used to sitting in their grandmother's basements with 10 screens there. Number one, from the manners, the dress, but it's the impatience. Yeah. Somebody that's used to 8 to 10 screens or however many different games, and you put in there and wait, they're going to make a big mistake for the most part because they're just so anxious to get in there. They find live poker to be too boring, and it's too slow for them.
No, I agree 100%. I have a player that I just took on as a client, and I don't know why he came to me because he's already up to 12 tables, and I said, why don't you cut down on the tables if you're having a hard time concentrating instead of coming to a coach? You want me to fix a problem that's under your control, and you're just playing too many, you're not paying attention. It's really easy. I don't even have to see you play. You told me a couple of things in our interview, and it's actually you're out of your playing zone right now. So I'm going to talk to him next week and try to talk him out of it right now and see if he can cut back and see if he can find the leaks or holes in his game himself, because he's wasting his time and my time if he wants me to look at him doing 12 tables. I can tell you right now, he's just not paying attention.
I mean, people who say that cell phones are not distracting, they're wrong. I mean, they're a wonderful distraction to our lives, staying in touch, but they are a distraction. So, 12 tables, I don't care how good your brain is, it's too much to keep up with.
Well, we're getting towards the end of the interview here, but I got to know, how did you get into poker in the first place?
Well, it's a sad story in my case. I had seen the World Poker Tour, had played around the kitchen table out in Vegas. My oldest was about 13 or 14, and then unfortunately he got struck with cancer at 14 rather suddenly. Sorry. And it was just so to sort of go through all the treatments and everything else. We played cards. We just sat there. He was a certified math genius. I could probably read people a little bit better, and so it kept things going. And after I lost him, which was just 8 months later from the diagnosis, a friend said, "You want to come play a tournament?" And I said, I don't even know how to register, So he took my hand, and an $85 tournament down at MGM, I think, and ended up making the final table, and so played again and did well, and had no idea really what I was doing. So I said I'd like to just go do one of the WPT boot camps, and there was one going on in New Jersey, and I said, no, I'll just wait. I was in Vegas. I'll just wait until 3 or 4 months, and there'll be one. And that's where I got lucky enough to meet. TJ was the teacher, and Jan and Linda and Mike Sexton, and I won the poker tournament that the WPT boot camp had, the only woman to ever do that, but made friendships from them and being able to ask questions. So because I'm very serious about it, I always think that there's something different or better that I can do. I do donate what I make in tournament poker into a scholarship fund that I run in my son's name. And
Hayden, right?
The Hayden Scholarship Foundation. It's all on my corporate site, which is Nancy Todd, TODD.com. You'll see the link in there for the Hayden Scholarship. And, we help students get an education who can't afford to do that on their own.
Now, can they use that scholarship in any state, or is it limited to one state?
It has to be in 50 states. I do get a lot because of the work I do internationally, and the IRS mandates that it must be to a U.S. university in order to keep the 501c3 deduction, and it is a tax deduction for anyone who'd like to contribute. We'll send you a thing where you can use it as a deduction for your taxes. So it's a 501c3.
And what was that website one more time?
It's on my corporate site. You'll see it there, nancytodd.com. You can also go directly to the Hayden, Hayden scholarship.com. But if you, as long as you can remember my name, you can find it through a link on my corporate site.
That's really good. Very good. I appreciate you putting that out there and doing that over the years. How many years have you been running that now?
Well, I guess about 9.
9 years.
Mm-hmm.
9 years. Okay. And any scholarships? How many scholarships do you know? Any scholarships that have been given out?
Oh, yeah, probably 30, 35 that we've helped students get an education. I'm involved in a tribe up in Central Florida, and the granddaughter of that tribe was able to go through, and the first person to ever leave the reservation and get an education at the University of Arizona was from the Hayden Scholarship. So she's now taken over as chief of the tribe back there. So my kids, it's neat for them to see, because my twins were only 3 when we lost their older brother. So as any parent would understand, you would want that to be remembered. So this is a good way for me to do that.
Well, listen, my niece Valerie's with Bent Prop. I don't know if you know what the Bent Prop project is, but she's going out to Palau right now with a bunch of folks that are going to dive down underneath the sea out there and try to find the remains of the World War II pilots and Korea War pilots, that anybody that was lost in the seas out in the South Pacific. And what they do on the Bent Prop project is dive down and find these old wreckage of the planes that the folks never did come home. And so she's out there, or on her way out there, to do that right now. And that brings us back to your father and his service. And thank you for him, for his service. I know that all of us out there that have been in part of the military really appreciate what the military family does, and what the spouses, the children, having to move. And you said you moved like 42 times, didn't you say something like that in your life? But a lot of it was military. 42
states running political campaigns. So early years started off moving frequently.
Yes.
And then later, my dad, when I was maybe in the 20s or something, he said, I can never find you. I said, who started this, buddy? Moving every 6 months with what fit into a trunk was very natural to me. And climbing on an airplane now with an overnight bag and traveling halfway around the world is not a problem. And I do attribute him for that whole mindset of it's just stuff, and you can just pick up and go.
Well, that's pretty good story, pretty good memories to think about. If we're ever in Florida, anybody out there that's down in Florida and Nancy's at the casino, please stop by and say hello to her. Tell her you heard her right here on Positive Poker Insiders. Nancy, thank you for your time, and if there's anything else that we haven't discussed or anything you want to promote or anything, now's the time. I don't know if you're into coaching or anything like that, but we certainly appreciate it.
Unfortunately, I don't have time to coach. I'm involved in an alternative cancer clinic over in Singapore and Switzerland, and involved in a big. I don't even have enough time during election year to play as much as I would like, and there are much better players out there who can coach someone, I can assure you. So I'm a little rusty, but I figure poker will be there when I have time to go back to it.
That's right. We'll be here for you, and we thank you for your time today. Thanks, everybody, for listening in to Positive Poker Insiders. We'll see you not next week. It's Easter, so we won't have a show, but the week after we'll have a show, and I'll put out a promo video of that real soon. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you.
It's been great. I appreciate it.
Thank you.